Roll. Ms. Rogers?
Here.
Judge Thurston is absent. Mr. Houston?
Present.
Mr. Schreininger is no longer on the board, so he is absent. Mr. Ward?
Here.
Ms. Borges-Gonzalez?
I'm here.
Thank you. We have a quorum. We will continue with the approval of the minutes. Sorry, is there anyone here for public comment? Didn't think so. Seeing none, we will move on to the agenda. Approval of the minutes from August and September of 2025. Has everyone had a chance to review, and are there any edits? If there are none, I entertain a motion to approve them both.
So moved.
Thank you, George. Is there a second?
Second.
A
All in
second.
favor? Aye?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you. My only note as chair is I was delighted to see over the weekend, I drive past our downtown stop for the football games, and I was encouraged not only to see Kentucky fans, which we'd rather see more of, but also Texas fans. So the people from Austin managed to get the clue about the shuttle to the game, which means I think our marketing is doing a great job. So well done on that to reach all the way to Austin. Moving ahead, we have a Finance Committee report. Mr. Ward.
Thank you. The Finance Committee met on September 26th to review the fiscal year 25 audit report. Brad Shelley with Crow went through the report with us. It's an unmodified opinion, which is the opinion that you want to receive in an audit. As in past years, the audit committee went through it pretty thoroughly with Brad, and we're satisfied with the report. We commended Nikki and her people on another great job. And we have with us today Shelby Lee with Crow, who will give us an overview of the highlights.
Okay. Welcome, Shelby.
Good morning. Thank you guys for having me. I don't know if we want to share it or not. I can give brief highlights unless we want to share.
It is.
It's ready? Okay.
Should be. Hold up. Can we get it up? It's the other document.
Switching the presentation on the keyboard.
While we're working on that, as George mentioned, I'm Shelby Lee. I'm a senior audit manager at Crow. I've been working on this audit for the past several years, over 10, I'm not sure, a pretty long time. So I've worked with Nikki and her team over the years, and this is a joy to work through. They're always very prepared, organized, and ready for us when we come to do our annual audit.
Shelby, even though you've worked on it for that length of time, let people know that the partner on it has changed.
Correct. We have gone through a couple different partner rotations who has the ultimate oversight of the engagement. And then I've remained consistent, but we also switched the team underneath me. So we've had several different staff, senior staff that have reviewed the financial statements. And then additionally, each year on top of our authorized signer, we have someone else that's specialized in public governmental type reports that will do a final level review. So each year that's a different person that gives just an additional layer of comfort to make sure there wasn't anything that we could have missed during the year. So the first couple pages, really this is what you guys engage us to do, is to issue this audit report. So George mentioned that you all did get an unmodified or clean opinion, which is exactly what you would like to see. This just means that we were able to get all of the proper information and didn't have any major concerns with the financial statements presented to us. The next section of the financial statement is the MD&A, or Management's Discussion and Analysis. So this breaks up the financial statements in kind of a more reader-friendly form, gives you a little bit more information and breaks down the financial data. I'll hit a few highlights on here, but it shows comparatives to the previous year in case you're curious. How did this year compare to previous years? Were there any significant fluctuations? This year there weren't any significant changes. It was pretty consistent year over year. I'll just point out a couple. This first page here has your assets, which increased about $6 million year over year. That relates to some capital asset purchases during the year, offset by depreciation, as well as some timing on grant receivables. This next page has your liabilities. You all don't have a ton of liabilities, so those increased minimally year over year, likely due to inflation and timing again. The next couple of pages really have a lot of information on capital assets, as this is a capital-intensive program. It shows significant acquisitions the past couple of years. So during this fiscal year, there were some bus and charger purchases of paratransit vehicles, obviously some additions to the transit center, and then some Avail technology upgrades. The bottom of this page kind of takes your balance and assets in the previous years and then shows those additions kind of broken out by category just for additional information. These are kind of showing the changes in the previous year at the top of the page. And then the bottom is a recap of your operations, your revenues and your expenses for the year. Again, pretty consistent year over year. The biggest change was non-operating revenue increase went up about 17%, which was due to timing and execution of your federal grant agreements. This page breaks down that revenue a little further so you can see the proportion your revenue where it's funded from. So your revenues are mainly attributable to property taxes. They're about 60% of your inflows of cash. And then obviously you all have state and federal assistance to kind of supplement that income, as well as your passenger fares. Again, year over year, no significant changes there, just a little more federal funding this year based on the timing of the execution of grants.
For everybody's information, those passenger fares, that includes the UK contract.
Correct.
Which is why it's that high.
This next page is the same thing. It's just breaking down your expenses into detailed categories. Your main expenses fall into the operating category, which is most of your wages, all the things you would need to operate the bus systems here. It went up a little year over year, nothing extremely significant. This is mainly attributable to inflation as well as increases in wages and benefits. This page is a summary of cash flows in and out. That's something that we look at in the audit to make sure that the cash reconciles and we know how the cash is being spent during the year. Not a lot of insight from this page, but just a good summary. The next few pages are the same information we just talked about, just in a different form that's required by the accounting standards. Again, very consistent year over year, nothing really to point out. These next two pages are specific to your pension assets and your pension plan activity. This is mainly driven by an actuarial report that is obtained each year and helps assess evaluation of future pension liabilities. You all are in a net pension asset position, which is a great place to be. That's heavily impacted by the market and the gains in the market, but you all are in a good position. The next several pages here are just required information related to the financial statements, giving additional insights. These first couple pages kind of walk through your accounting policies internally. There weren't any big changes year over year. It's pretty consistent. There were a couple of new GASBs or requirements that Nikki and her team have to consider if that changes how you would account for anything. One of them was related to if there were additional disclosures necessary related to any concentration risks. You all did not need to add any disclosures for that. The other related to a change in the industry on consideration of compensated absences. This slightly adjusted the calculation of a liability included within your financial statements. It was about $300,000, so not considered significant or material. Again, the rest of this is required disclosures we kind of already touched on going through the MD&A, very consistent with previous years. And then the last, there are a lot of required disclosures related to your pension plan. So these just break that down into further detail if you have any questions or wanted more insight specific to the pension plan. And then the next, there's a couple other audit opinions. These relate specific to your federal grant expenditures and receipts of money. We issue a separate audit opinion on those. One relates to the fact that we feel comfortable that there are controls in place related to federal funding. We did not find any deficiencies that we would need to report to you guys. So you're getting a clean audit opinion as it relates to those federal expenditures as well. Otherwise, I think, the only other couple notes, again, we appreciate the relationship and the organization of Nikki and her team. I mentioned we didn't have any significant findings during the year to report to you guys, or any instances of non-compliance or issues that would require us to disclose to you guys. So I can pause if there's any questions specific.
I'll add one more thing. Shelby doesn't, this is the only transit agency that she works on, but Brad works on many from around the country. And so when we have him in the room, we quiz him on how we're doing comparatively, and we're in a pretty solid position.
Okay.
I have a couple questions. I just want to make sure that
Yes.
I'm done.
Okay. Well, and I think you may say Brad Wood is the better person to ask this, because he did give us a lot of insight on the finance committee, just where we're standing compared to other transit organizations. And because we do rely so heavily on property tax, it does help us have a more reliable source of revenue.
Mm-hmm.
Is anyone, and maybe you're saying that this is a Brad question, doing kind of worst case scenario planning? Like, hey, yes, we are sitting on a very reliable source of income, property tax right now. It still could fluctuate. I know that's not, is anyone doing that?
I'm sure that everyone is. I don't know any specifics. Like, I know Brad's probably involved in more of those discussions, but I think industry-wide, if you are significantly reliant on property taxes, it's trying to determine if there's additional grant funding where you could supplement if those were to go down. But I don't know that there's any new magic sources or things like that, but obviously a concern. But yeah, Brad would probably have a little more insight, but that's kind of my.
And you mentioned federal funds like 10 times in your presentation, but
Yes.
really we only rely on federal funds for capital. Is that mostly correct? Or
It also offsets some operating expenses as well. So preventative maintenance and paratransit, there is federal funding that offsets those operating expenses as well.
yeah, besides paratransit and preventive maintenance. And then we did look at the pension plan, if you go back to 31, because she noted it's in a very great shape. And then we asked Brad in the meeting, I think it was 31, of like,
This one or the next one?
I think this is one.
I think the next two, go to more.
Where, and I know we have a pension committee that looks
That
at
one.
this. In his opinion, we were a little bit, I don't know if the right word was overfunded, but very, very healthy. And there's a variety of different decisions they could make. One is like make benefits better, or consider shortening that. But I think that was just one thing that he noted. It was so healthy. I forget what the percentage was. 1.5? Does that number sound right?
There's, yeah, well, on the coverage.
It's not 150% funded, it's closer to 110% funded.
Yeah, I think that's like 105%.
105%. There was some number that.
Yeah.
I'm trying to figure out which number he pointed to.
Yeah, one thing you pointed out, if you,
I think it might be this 127% towards the bottom of the screen in the left-hand column. That's kind of the percentage funded of the liability.
And then comparatively, it's a healthy pension plan maybe to other pensions that he looks at.
Correct, yes.
So nothing to do at this moment, but just something.
To consider,
Noted.
yes.
yeah, if you go 2 more slides,
This one.
that's the return year to year, and we've had 2 good years, but you can see we've had bad years too.
Correct, that's
So
the
while-
risk,
While we're in this
yes,
position today, who knows what's gonna happen with the stock market,
correct.
and so things can change, so we more or less decided we need to probably stand pat to see.
We have a pension committee, consists of 1 board member, 3 union and 2 administrative staff, and we review this every quarter. Our investment manager, Mariner, gives us a quarterly report, and we review it. We ask questions. We get the actuarial report. We ask him to do all kinds of scenarios of, increasing benefits by $5, $1, $10.
Yeah.
We did increase the benefit back in November.
Right.
So we do monitor that very closely.
Was it $50 a month? What was the increase?
It was $50 was the benefit, and it's $60 now.
Any other questions? Okay, thank you guys.
Thank you. We will move to the general manager's report on the transit center.
Thank you very much. The Transit Center construction project continues on. We are working on the exterior as well as finishing up the interior. There's no change orders in this month's board meeting related to the Transit Center. We do have a couple issues that are brewing. One is the plumbing under the structure. We don't have the information that we need to make decisions on that, but we see that this could be a curveball that we did not expect. We'll have more to share on that once we get more information. But other than that, we are moving along.
Is it that we think that there's damage to the underslab plumbing?
No, as the plumbing is, we don't think that there's enough clearance for parking. This is actually in the parking structure, not in our area. So we'll have more detail on that once we figure a good path forward.
That's existing plumbing or new planned plumbing?
And have we set a date for the opening?
We've not set a hard date. We're looking towards the end of this year or early next year.
Going into next year was not the original plan.
It was not, no, but the additional, the exterior,
Yeah.
plus some of the change orders on the interior.
So we would be potentially going into winter months without.
Now, it won't be too deep into next year. I think we've got to get this thing wrapped up and open soon. But again, this plumbing thing has got me a little nervous. But once we have some more information, we'll figure out a path forward.
Okay. If we had not added the exterior scope, would we have finished the interior work on time?
I believe so. I think some of the interior change orders did push that schedule back a little bit.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think we would have ended on time. Is that, Chris, how are you feeling? Yeah.
Pretty close to it. Any other questions? Great. Then we'll move to monthly performance report.
Thank you. So we will be going over the performance report for September. And we'll start with the mission. We serve people in our community with mobility solutions. So in September, we had the 16th annual bus rodeo. On the 20th, Mr. Burnett once again took first place. And we had two folks place for the first time. Operator Carrie Sullivan got second, and Colton Hook got third. It was great. Tons of people came. It was a great success. It's a great engagement event for staff and for them to be able to show off their skills in a totally different way than if we're sort of out on the street. We placed 4 new 2025 electric Gillig buses into service, and 10 new paratransit cutaway vehicles were received. On September 9th, LFUCG City Council finalized funding for the Downtown Circulator Project, and we are continuing to move forward with that project. We'll bring you more information as partners sort of reconvene and we move forward with that. Several staff participated in the Week Without Driving campaign beginning on September 28th, and that was just a really good opportunity and reminder of some of the challenges of folks who don't have reliable transportation, or some of the hoops that we would have to jump through to complete our everyday lives if we were exclusively riding the bus. As you all participated, we had board focus groups in September, and we're continuing the efforts for strategic planning, and this month we've already had some stakeholder engagement, and we're looking forward to some public engagement as well. So for fixed route ridership, we did see we had 325,000-ish rides for the month. That is, as far as ridership is concerned, is still down some. You can sort of, you can see on the graph, And then if we move to the numbers here, you can see that it is down from last year. One of the things that we've been talking about as we've been moving forward and looking at ridership and understanding who, what, where, when, how of all of it is, while it is higher in September, as we expected with a full month of UK back in service, it is still lower. This month, our automated passenger counter recertification we have been working through, and we've found that our manual counts are showing higher than the counts that the automated passenger counters are doing. So there are several pieces involved in that recertification, and it's giving us information with what we suspected is that there are issues with the equipment or data issues. It is figuring out whether it is an issue with the equipment, it is a data issue, what is happening. So we're working through that recertification process now, and we are working with Avail to understand where that issue is coming from. We do regular checks for issues with equipment. And if that equipment falls outside of the range, we are consistently working with maintenance staff, IT staff to do an audit on those vehicles. And is it counting properly? Is there a wire out of place? Does it need to be replaced? And so we're regularly doing those check-ins. But that is on a smaller scale, and this is on a much larger scale that we're looking across the board. As we find out more information, we will continue to report back and understand what issue we are having, but it does give us the inclination, as we have been working on the theory, that there is something else going on and we are not receiving accurate information. As to the scale of that, I cannot give a truthful answer because we don't necessarily currently know what the scale of it is. I mean, the nice thing is back to seeing more trips per hour, back to seeing higher total ridership, but not where we necessarily expected, and knowing that we are potentially not getting all of the information.
And Emily, is that a new, like, we think that may account for the last 2 months, or that we think that may account for the last year and a half? Because I think it's all last year we saw about 1 million less rides for the year.
Yes, we started seeing a change in September of last year, a
Okay.
significant change, I should say,
Okay.
a noticeable change. What we're trying to figure out is what is the scale of that change. So are there actually fewer riders, which could be the case? What is the scale of the issue, and how much is it necessarily impacting? And that's something that we've been looking at. And like I said, we're monitoring this system regularly for, one that's broken, things like that. So I believe as a team, we still think that there's a data issue involved. But getting to the heart of that is you're pulling needles out of a haystack and sort of like, okay, it's not this. So is it this? It's not this. So is it this? It's not this. So is it this? And as we get more information, this larger scale audit is something that's regular. The APC recertifications happen every 3 years. They just happen to be occurring this year, which is really fruitful for us. But we've been working with Avail on this for a while, knowing that we sense that there is something that is not going properly with this counting. And now it's really getting down to the nitty gritty of it with them. I mean, this is not like you get an open ticket and you get your response and you kind of move on. We're getting to the point where we're working with sort of like experts in XYZ. And we're down to like, okay, this is the person who can help you, not this is the team of people who responds to your ticket. So we do think we're onto something. We think we're moving in the right direction as to understanding what is really happening. But I can't give you a hard and fast answer currently. So as we continue to move forward, this recertification process, we will turn in everything, we'll get information back from them. It counts both the people boarding, which is what we would attribute to ridership, as well as the people getting off of the buses or alighting. And so both of those things are monitored. So there's a lot of there are a lot of inputs, and we're trying to figure out why the output is not what we expect.
Do we do manual counts kind of regularly / randomly, or only when we're doing one of these recertifications?
So yes and no. Do we do them? Is there a scheduled manual count every single month? Not necessarily. With the volume of routes, the volume of trips, all of that, it's a really cumbersome task, and a small team to do it. So not necessarily, no. If we think there's a problem, we can have people physically get on the bus and do it. We can do it via video. Physically doing it on the bus is a much harder task because it's so easy to get distracted. But a lot of this is a video verification process. So you download a video, you watch the entirety of a trip, which is 70 minutes. You count the number of people who get on and the number of people who get off at each stop and then compare. It's not a small ask.
Feels like a job for AI.
Yeah, yeah. It feels like, exactly. And you know, if you're doing a volume of these, it's taking a significant amount of time. And then, you know, it is a couple of people doing it on top of their regular everyday tasks. And so, you know, I think there's a place to say how often and is, you know, what else could we potentially be doing to monitor in this way? We've gotten out, we thought there were some issues with UK. We still think there are some issues with the service at UK counting riders. We've gotten out and done some rides, but that's not necessarily indicative of the entirety of the service or otherwise, just that there is a difference on campus, and then there's also just the boarding and exiting procedures there tend to be both doors at the same time and en masse, right? You out on the street, you may have one or two people getting on it at certain stops. Other stops are much busier, but at certain stops on UK, you have a literal wall of humans moving into the vehicle and a wall of humans moving out of the vehicle. It's just a different process. And so there's there's more potential for errors over there. Yeah.
The trips per hour number, so that's the average number of boardings in a average or typical hour. Mm-hmm. So 16.36 with including all of the routes, right, in
Yes.
the system?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, every route.
Okay.
Yes.
Hurtful, that's a calculated number.
Yes.
Like it's not strictly speaking,
Ridership and revenue hours.
that's all it is, just ridership divided by revenue hours.
Yeah.
Sorry, I thought there was more to it than that, but I guess there's.
It's lower than you would expect, but, you know, but it is what it is, so.
Mm-hmm.
Puts it in perspective.
It is lower than we would expect. It is, you know, we were saying about 19, which is what we saw last month, but sort of like for the fiscal year. And so it is encouraging for me to see that number again, but that's a single month of data, and you know, obviously that's not the whole story. And George was right about last month, that there was an extra Sunday in the month. I went back in. I did not look at my calendar before that meeting. Okay, so looking at on-time performance, it was, September was rough all the way around. It was 82.5 last month, which is moving away from our target of 90%. You can see here it is on trend. We tend to sort of see some suffering in August, some suffering again in September. And our planning team, Jason's team, operations, we've been looking at, what we're looking for right now is structural issues. And addressing structural issues with changes. September saw difficulty across the board. We are seeing some better on-time performance in October. This is sort of looking back a typical trend. I mean, you can see it here as well for the service, that August and September have some big impactful issues with on-time performance. And so what we're looking to do is make the routes that we know that have structural issues, make the changes that we can make to prevent, there may be some slide, but prevent that from happening in such a stark way the next time it happens. And there are a couple of routes, there's several routes that we're looking at. Route 1's having some difficulty. It's a tight schedule, and it's difficult to maintain, which both our staff and customers are impacted by that. And then Route 15 particularly is having some challenges as well.
Which of those two?
So Route 1 is the Woodhill route. So it is going to go from the Transit Center, service Kroger on Euclid, down Fontaine, past Henry Clay High School, and then it also services the Senior Center, and then the Palumbo, Codell, Woodhill area out into Bainbridge. It's a long route. Route 15 is Red Mile. So campus housing, off-campus housing, but you're hitting Nicholasville Road, Versailles Road, Angliana, and Red Mile, all incredibly congested areas, especially during those times that students are moving. But the reliability is just as important for all of these folks as it is for other routes. So those are ones that, that we're working diligently to make some changes to. And, you know, when we're talking about a tight schedule, we're talking about really difficult conversations that we're having as a staff. How do we make it better? And improve the quality of the route and serve the folks that we need to serve.
On the Red Mile route, do you either observe or get comments that maybe the bus is already full by the time it gets to some of those stops? Because I drive down that street sometimes and every bus stop is just loaded with students.
Yes, that and the timeliness of that route can impact that, right? So it is a more frequent route. It runs more often, and if it is running behind, we are capturing more students with each time that the bus comes by. But yet there are times of day where that is a gangbusters is what I would call it. It's a gangbusters route where we're standing room only on those. So what we're trying to figure out is how to keep it moving and how to keep it going for them, so that there may be times of day where it is just standing room only because of the volume of people living in the areas and going to campus. It's just busy, it's dense. But making it the most efficient for them so that it's reliable, so that they can, as we all do, rush out the door at the last moment and still get to class on time or onto campus or whatever they need.
What's the frequency on that route?
24.
24 minutes is a loop up to where Byways taking a little bit longer with all the traffic that we have in that area.
24 minutes is the current schedule frequency. On to safety. So kudos to Steve and his team. We did have 3 preventable accidents for the month, but if you can see that year to date, there is a significant decrease in those. You know, that there's been a concerted effort to reach out to staff, look at what's happening, what's going well, what's going poorly, and really make concerted messaging and consistent interactions. And we're definitely seeing overall a decrease in the number of those preventable accidents. For maintenance, so we had 11,390 miles between road calls this month. We've talked about it before. That number ebbs and flows, so some months it's really high. I also see a typo, my apologies. It was 66 of 66 preventative maintenance inspections in September. They were at 100% again, and then there were a total of 15 road calls for the month. Any other questions I can answer?
It's more just a note. I see our marketing RFP went out, and I was just looking, so it looks like it went out and closed. So I know that's something we've been talking about for about a year. Just a note.
That will hopefully be brought to the board next month for resolution.
And was that paid for with last year's dollars? It was in last year's budget, wasn't it, with marketing for an outside firm?
Yes. The projects themselves, we'll talk about how each one of those are funded. We
Okay.
do have a marketing budget internal that we draw from our advertising
Okay.
revenue. The initial contract itself won't have a value to it.
Okay,
It'll be a task order based contract similar to our A&E or
okay,
those kinds of contracts.
understood.
Thank you.
Alright, so on to the paratransit side. So for the month of September, total ridership was 15,179. Ridership is slightly below the previous month, but remains in trend when compared to the previous fiscal year. As you can see from the graph, during the months of July leading up to mid-October, the ridership usually fluctuates as low as the lowest side of the 15,000 range ridership numbers. And then as we approach the end of October, it kind of trends toward the downside, back into that 12 to 14,000 ridership range. So we are expecting that ridership to start making its way down back into the trend, leading all the way through the months of November leading up to February, March. As far as the productivity, overall, the ridership is still slightly over about 9% compared to the previous fiscal year. Reflects an increase of about 1,600 trips, 1,600 riders during the weekday, slightly over 500 riders on the weekend. Holidays also higher than the previous fiscal year. The total revenue miles and revenue hours remain up, and trips per hour is 2.2 for the month of September. As far as safety side, 2 preventable accidents for the month of September. This fiscal year is still below when compared to the previous fiscal year. In talks with RTB Dev Wills, they are currently hosting monthly safety meetings, and that does include what we call a combination of monthly safety blitz, where they go out in the morning, they do pop-ups, they talk about best safety practices, and also address any concerns that may have come in from the previous months leading up to the current month of any accidents or incidents. They've also conducted several safety messages that goes out to each operator throughout the day, and then also refresher trainings. As far as the OTP, we have RATP Dev had went several months consecutively of OTP above 80%, but unfortunately in the month of September, OTP was 75.9%. I apologize, 75.9%. The OTP was impacted by several challenges, one being manpower. And in order to address the manpower concerns, RTP Dev has currently started the training process, has several operators in different various training processes, that's behind the wheel as well as in classroom training, and they are expected to be fully staffed during the first week of November. We've also worked with RTP Dev to initiate a new run bid that also went into service mid-September. And we expect those changes to impact the November OTP. So the September and October OTP should be fairly similar, and all changes should be impacted in the month of November. Outside of...
Randolph, will you say that again? What went into service?
We did a run bid. So we evaluate all of the runs, we evaluate the ridership, and we make significant changes to the time that the operators actually report to work.
Okay. I didn't know what a run bid was.
In addition to the run bid and hiring process, I also would like to note that RTB Dev faced some challenges outside of some things that they can control, such as power outages in the Leestown rural area. Although it's still construction, they've also had several contracted services such as Spectrum and different services dealing with the power lines and different things like that that may have impacted their ability to see operationally inside of the building. So in trying to resolve those issues, they've added additional phone lines to switch over in those instances, and also I believe they have a backup generator that will kick in when those power outages happen as well. Three? Yeah.
Any questions?
I apologize. Any questions?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Nikki?
Good morning. We are looking at, well, we're going the wrong way. Looking at the financials for the third month of the fiscal year for September 30th, 2025. Our balance sheet is very similar to last year. We have added some assets, as Shelby mentioned, last year. But as far as operating cash, we are about the same place we were last year. We're expecting the majority of the property tax to come in within the next month. So you'll see that reflected either for October or November. We have, the work in process is a little bit higher than last year, about 900,000 of that is a transit center that we've been looking at. The rest of it is reimbursement for things like paratransit vehicles, computers, our normal capital items. But everything else on the balance sheet looks really well, unless anyone has any questions. Okay, we'll look at our statement of revenue and expenses. We are right on budget for our property taxes and passenger revenue. As you know, property taxes is a timing thing. We have received a little bit more than we did this time last year, and passenger revenue, we are down from last year, but we are over what we budgeted, so that's a good spot. The federal funds, that's timing, as we've usually said, some of the grants are slower than they have been in the past, so we're still there's no problem in getting reimbursement for those, it's just timing. We did receive from some state funds in the month of September for some items that we had submitted for reimbursement, so that's about $400,000. Our other expenses, that's down. We're still waiting on the UK contract to be signed. Fred's working with UK on that, so hopefully that'll be done soon. I'm very happy with the expense side. We are down on almost all expenses. We're very happy with that. Materials and supplies, of course, is a timing, because that one will fluctuate whenever we buy bus parts, but right now we are still under budget. Our fuel is looking good. We're still about 50,000 under in fuel if you count diesel and CNG together. Our monthly average was $258 for the month of September. It's $256 for the fiscal year. I looked at last year, it was $243 this time last year. We are very happy with the expenses at this point, but I'll be glad to answer any questions. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Nikki. All right, next is our ramp update.
So to lead us to the ramp update, we have Emily Elliott and Tazai Bakara. And because our screen is having some issues, we have the slides for you here. Leading out of the ramp update, I think we can go straight into the first resolution as it relates to ramp.
Yes, so today we will be talking about our ramp program, or rider amenities at many places, and this is our program that focuses specifically on bus improvements. This is phase 5 of this program, so it has been going for several years. You all have approved several resolutions related to it, and the program not only includes the physical work, but also the purchase of the amenities. So sort of the relationship that maintenance has with planning and operations on the street. So the program officially started in fiscal year 2021. The goal of RAMP is to break down barriers, right? We are making stops more accessible for people. We are giving them a more dignified experience. We are providing shelters. We are providing boarding pads. We are providing all these sorts of amenities. Currently, we have about 900 active stops with 103 shelters. These numbers are very fluid, right? So every time we make a change to service and add additional service on the street, there is a chance that we will add bus stops. Every time that we remove a segment of service, there is a chance that we will remove a stop. Every time that someone drives their car, there is a chance that they will put it through one of the shelters on the street. I think we replaced a shelter that had been taken out by a car last week, and then we had, not even 24 hours later, another shelter so gratefully removed by a car. That one was very out of date, so they got to remove that removal fee from the process for us. But, you know, just as a reminder, this is a fluid process. We are constantly looking, changing, how do we do better, how do we make sure these are in the proper places, and how do we give folks the dignified experience. This does work with infrastructure that we depend on other folks for. So whether it's a new development putting in sidewalks, whether it's a city making appropriate sidewalks connections, a lot of these decisions under this program are not made in a vacuum. They are not sort of us running out and throwing things out on the street, but making those choices and investing on the sidewalk into passengers and into the service, but doing it in a way that is thoughtful and long-term. Currently, about 40% of our riders start their trip at stops with a shelter, so at a covered shelter stop. And that's really one of the things that, you know, I think is an important way to talk about this. We are not necessarily focusing the shelters themselves on areas where someone's gonna just get off the bus and walk away. But really, where are they standing and waiting? Where is that, we know that that perceived wait time on the street is 2 to 3 minutes longer than per minute than it actually is. That you feel like you're waiting there for a really, really long time, no matter how it's bus stop minutes, it's not real minutes. It's kind of like dog years. It's much longer. It feels so much longer than it should. But when we're giving folks that dignified experience, we're alleviating some of that, right? We're alleviating the wind, the snow, the rain, all of those things. So we know it's really important, and that's why we've had a focus, and the board has had a focus for a while on improving the experience for our passengers. So Tazaya Bakra is our capital projects coordinator. He's also our DBE liaison, and he's been working diligently over the past couple of years, putting the work into place, getting it moving. So I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to him and let him walk you through some of this information.
Well, can I ask you a quick question?
Of course.
On the 40%, would that count the transit center if it was open?
Did we count the transit center? No.
Okay.
That was a good question. Yeah. No, we did not count the transit center.
So do they count in the denominator?
I don't believe we count that I think they count as an active stop. I don't believe that that counts technically as a sheltered stop. It does account for only one single stop in the system. So despite the volume of routes coming in and out of that, we're not counting that per route. That would count as one singular stop in the system.
How do people start their trip though at the transit center?
Some people do. So
We wouldn't
there
know,
are
would we? Is there a way for us to know?
not
Like
necessarily
10%
now.
of people
But like if I
start-
live at Rose Towers and I'm able to come over and start at the transit center, I could board at Rose Towers, right? If I have the mobility and it's in sort of my plan, I can head down to the transit center. It's about 1.5 blocks away, and I could start my trip down there. There is some potential time savings in that, and we have some incredibly savvy riders who know how to navigate and how to do these things, how to hop on one route, hop off, walk a block, and then pick up another route. So there is a lot of savvy stuff like that happening. We do have several trips ending. If Central Library is your final stop, or the Government Center, for instance, you are potentially starting and ending a trip at the transit center. But with the transfers, there's a lot of stopping and starting of trips.
All right, thank you.
Sorry, go ahead.
Good morning. All right, so a little bit about the program history and purpose. We have 116 bus stops improved since the first phase, which began in 2022 fiscal year. As you can see from these numbers, a lot of these have been boarding pads, and you can see the trend over the years that obviously we've done a little bit less, and we can tie into that the cost of amenities going up over the years due to inflation, and also with not having as much funding over those years. So as you can see, we had 72 boarding pads altogether over these phases. And for this phase coming up, that was the majority as well as what we're looking at implementing. We want to make sure that we have great accessibility for all walks of life, particularly people with disabilities. And one thing I like to consider is also, our apparel, right? So we don't, if people are going to work, we want to make sure that they're not stepping into mud when it's inclement weather, rain, sleet, snow. That's all a factor. And it ties into safety as well when we look at where we focus a lot on the boarding aspect. FTA regulation requires that as well. So we have a lot of stops retroactively that I've been looking at that, what can we do coming up in the next several fiscal years, really focusing on that as well, trying to get to a point of replacing some of our older shelters as well, before we move forward with putting in new shelters, brand new shelters at stops that qualify under our ridership, which I've discussed here coming up. Touching back on amenities here, FTA does require these for bus stops where we do have a lift or a ramp that is to be deployed under the 49 CFR Part 37. Obviously, we know what waste receptacles do, benches, and what shelters are for. Touching a little bit on the cost, waste receptacles or trash cans, whatever term you choose to use for it, they're low cost initially, and obviously we'll have a lot more of that currently. Particularly, we do have a lot more of that at our stops, but over time we have instances of theft that has occurred, rusting, weathering, vandalism, and we want to make sure that these trash cans look good. It's a good perception while also maintaining the cleanliness of the city. And then when we look at the benches, it's low cost as well compared to shelters. And we do have, from my evaluation, we do have quite a few around the city that do need replacement. But right now, the priority has kind of been more, let's get these shelters and benches together, shelters and boarding pads together. And then the big one is obviously the huge investment in shelters and the increased costs over time. And we will continue to see that go up as well. And that's especially important for what we'll be getting into as far as solar units. Because the older shelters, obviously, we do have quite a few that need replacement throughout the city, and we want to be able to enhance the comfortability for our passengers. So the selection process for our stop improvements, one of the things that when I started doing these evaluations are what I would call bus stop assessments. I went out, I went into the system, I looked at the calendar year for 2024. If I could, I would love to improve all 900 stops. I would love to have amenities at every stop, but of course, budget-wise, that's not possible, it's not realistic. So we look at the 5 boardings on average or more, and I did round up, so it could be 4.67, but so I rounded up to give an advantage and consideration for these stops.
That's per day, right?
Per day, yes. So 5 boardings per weekday on average during the calendar year of 2024 is what I looked at. And with that, there was 166 stops that were identified that we could, do some improvements to. The next step was to look at those 166 stops and say, okay, what do we have at these stops? So I had to see, okay, do we currently have a shelter? Do we currently have trash cans? Do we currently have boarding pads? So from that process, I began the elimination from those. So, okay, we have a brand new shelter at that stop that, for example, has 25 boardings on average. So that wouldn't be considered. So along that, when looking at the conditions, I'm looking at whether it's good, whether it's in fair condition, or whether it's in poor condition. And I rated these stops to say, okay, if we have an amenity that's currently there, if the condition is in poor condition, I'm moving that up as a priority to get that stop in high consideration for our program, our project. If it's nothing there, as you see, we want to take what's there, right? There's nothing there. That would be considered a poor rated stop in a sense. It's really not a condition per se because there's no amenities there. So the first thing I'm looking at, the first picture is we need a boarding pad, okay? And then depending on the ridership, if it's higher, which if we look at like the threshold of 10 boardings, 15 boardings, then we can consider benches. But first we got to get a boarding pad in there, okay? But we ultimately we wanted to get to the second photo there. And as you see, there's 2 shelters there. It has a trash can. The sidewalk itself is the boarding pad. The concrete work is not in horrible condition, but it's not in great condition either. But we want to make sure that we upkeep those stops particularly. That stop right there has around 50 plus boardings on average per weekday for 2024. So that is where we would like to get to with all our stops. Of course, that depending if it meets those thresholds. And then the other factor is looking at the location, right? So we have to look at the infrastructure. Obviously, we have a lot of construction going on currently and in the future, particularly when we look at Nicholasville Road, New Circle Road, that will affect what stops can be worked on currently per se, because if the infrastructure is changing, I have to coordinate with the city and make sure, hey, what's the consideration as far as that in the future? So we try to focus more on what can we do right now for the current locations, the infrastructure. Also, what ties into the location is senior facilities, places where heavy populations of people that where we see high boardings, where they work, schools, these different factors. And then, of course, staff and community requests. I have quite a few requests that come in from our bosses, that would be Emily Ellie and Greg Butler, which come to me and they tell me, we would like to look at this style, we have a special request for it. So I'll go out, I'll evaluate it, give my suggestion for what we can do, and then they move forward with that. Also, community requests. Recently had an elderly employee at a school who asked me, yeah, can we have a bench at this stop? Because my feet hurt all day. And that is considered heavily, because I really want to take care of our people with ADA, disability, or are elderly. People who don't have access to cars, obviously we look at the different areas of the city, right? Where it's more vehicles or vehicle travel or just things of that nature.
Let me ask a quick question.
Yes, sir.
Just popped in my head. What do we do in a snow event at the bus stops and the shelters? Do we do anything?
The snow is really difficult. Our paid our contract deals primarily with the facility here in the transit center first. There is some property requirement in city ordinance that you are required to clear your we know how that works, right? You are required to clear, and so it typically is up to a business owner or a property owner. I don't expect a lot of property owners are clearing either their sidewalk or the bus stop themselves. We have accepted special requests in the past, or if there's a high priority area. Facilities usually do a pretty good job, businesses, like the senior center, stuff like that, they know, but snow events can be really, really difficult in these situations, especially if we have a stop in a residential area where it would fall on the property owner to clean those. And I think we saw in January of this year that it can be wildly impactful for an extended period of time when we get that intense ice and snowpack. So it's a consideration. It is not currently a requirement as a part of our contract for our contractor to clear every bus stop.
Thank you.
All right. So budget summary for this phase, we're looking at 13 stops with $95,346 in work, with the majority, over half, coming from for boarding pads. Tend to be more expensive depending on the size, which can fluctuate that cost, make it higher. Typically, the minimum boarding pad we want to see a 5 by 8 or 40 square feet. So once we start seeing, because of what would be the front buffer where we would put boarding pads, if the size is 80 square feet, you talk 100 square feet, that starts to make that cost go up, right? So we had several stops that were on the higher priority for that reason. So we have 7 waste receptacle placements or replacements that which is very low in cost as far as the work there. And then 4 shelter replacements, and then 1 bench pad and bench placement. And then there's the mobilization fee. There was some curb work that is not listed on there, which is included as far as part of the work of adding a boarding pad, which is about $3,500 there, because it's important to have that part of it. We don't want the integrity of the boarding pad from weather, also safety-wise, vehicles that could run up on the curb or whatnot. So the next phase of ramp, the focus is on, as mentioned earlier, more shelter replacements, and of course, continuing with our boarding pad improvements to meet ADA standards. Currently I project right now we have 22 stops for solar consideration, which 6 are currently ready and good for solar installations, with 17 confirmed, which will be the solar light audit. So looking at the location, whether it's viable for implementation of solar. We have 17 confirmed good solar locations for shelters, with 17 shelters that need replacement. And then there are 6 stops not good for solar out of the 17 that need replacement. So that just ties into, we're just looking at, hey, let's get these shelters replaced, but also particularly looking at, hey, let's move forward with the solar project once we get past the next phase of ramp, then move towards the phase 2 of our solar installations. And the complete system-wide bus stop assessment. The focus is also moving forward, which I began part of this project, is what amenities do we currently have? As Emily stated earlier, it's never static. Things happen. Trash cans disappear for various reasons, or they're taken out by accidents. Benches are removed. So going back out, looking at every stop on every route, all 900. Currently, outside of the 166 consideration, I had also did 40 extra stops prior to that, which was about 200 stops that I had covered beginning and ending the year. So I have about 700 more to go through, but I'll work on that, trying to collaborate with other departments and see what we can do as far as getting that accomplished sooner than later. I like to work fast, but that's me. And also looking at the current conditions, continuing to always monitor even the stops that we do end up improving. But I still have to go out, make sure that I evaluate these stops for the next phase. Some of the stops that I had on the list that wasn't mentioned today didn't make the cut because of budget, but that would still be for the next phase unless there's other factors that come into play, other variables that could put another stop in place of that. But other than that, thank you. And if you have any questions or concerns, comments or anything, feel free.
That's good. Yeah. The solar is just used for lighting usually?
Yes, so the solar lighting, it's for for passengers at nighttime, safety reasons, perhaps more so wintertime, when we see it getting dark early. There are students, people who work at night, particularly like if they're waiting for the bus, hey, they might need that lighting, particularly if they're on the way to class, from class, whatever, to catch up on some work, finish some work, or whatever the case is. So yeah, it's just enhancement, improving the quality of our stops as well.
I'm sorry, we received a 5310, so improving mobility for seniors and people with disabilities, we received a 5310 grant, and that is where the funding for the solar installations is coming from. So shelter replacements are one thing, solar is separate, and that funding does cover both the amenity itself as well as the work.
Is there any opportunity to use that power for like real-time digital display of the route information or anything? I know that has cost implications way above.
We have not explored that with our manufacturer as to what everything that they spec out is specifically just for lighting. So as far as like the energy storage, energy output, usage, all of that, we have not spec'd anything else at all. As far as like being able to piggyback or even add additional panels. It's a pretty small unit on the roof. The manufacturer works with us to do an audit, so we have our initial request of stops, and then they they do a full audit for us based on their area of expertise with solar lighting and how the sun moves and all of these things in our locations, the infrastructure on the stop. But we have not explored in any way.
Probably be an entirely
Like,
different system
Probably an entirely
and bigger
different system.
panel and all that.
Yeah, it's a pretty small panel. The lights are really bright. They're LED lights, so they're really nice. But I don't know what the usage and the output and stuff like that is as far as other opportunities.
And my other question was, have you guys considered adding bike parking to any of the stops as an amenity? And I know that wouldn't be appropriate for every stop, but there might be some neighborhoods where, you know, there's kind of a limit to how far people walk to stop. We usually assume like quarter mile maybe.
Yes.
But to reach that quarter mile to a mile, you know, folks might ride an e-bike, and that's a little bit too heavy to put on a bus, so they might want to park it there. Is that something we could consider?
We coordinated with the city on the last bike ped plan, and the actual location of bicycle parking would be the responsibility of the MPO. But I do think there are some stops that they identified through that plan where that would be a good,
Yeah, okay.
good connection.
And when we're looking at those, if there's, you know, an opportunity, concrete is expensive, but most people
Right.
don't necessarily want to park there, like in a mud pit either, beside a bus stop. So, you know, that's an opportunity for collaboration with them.
And given that, I mean, I really believe this work is important and you guys are doing a great job, is there any way to increase the funding? I know, I think a large part of it is federally funded for this program. I would love to see more of it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, I know we had this conversation very significantly in the finance committee over the last few
Yeah.
years. We increased it from 75,000 to 150,000 for 3 years that he was showing you. And then I think we got to the point where they said, if we just keep doing bus stops, we're gonna be putting bus stops where there's less than 10 people. That's what I think we were told.
Less than 5.
Yeah, so it was like, at this point, it's not, I think we were told, financially responsible to continue to put bus stops anymore. Shelters, sorry, yes, sorry. Shelters on any more, because we've hit everyone that has 10 stops, or there was some threshold.
Yeah, it's the 10 average 40s a day, sorry.
Yep.
And so that is correct. There was several years ago a large push for us to do, what was it, like 100 shelters in 2 years or something like that, and we pushed pretty hard. That's a grandiose goal. So one of the things that we have been looking at is the state of repair of those shelters, which after 3-4 additional years of use and wear and tear, it has become apparent that about 10 years of useful life is 10 years of useful life is good. Once we start getting beyond that, we're having holes in them. So we are looking with a different perspective now as well. There is also, so the mandate for accessibility is through architecture and engineering and at a federal level, and it mandates that any bus stop that is moved, modified, or placed must have a boarding pad and a sidewalk connection. So if we consider moving a bus stop on Mercer Road where there is not a sidewalk, how do we make that work, right? How do we petition the city? And so while it was a best practice previously, it was not a mandate. So we are doing significantly more spending in concrete work than we would have previously. So some of the pads that you've seen here are over the last several changes that we've made that are a new pad. Now that's allowing us to make a more tempered decision about the location of that stop because we are married to it at that point. We're putting concrete down.
But that's just going forward.
Going
We don't have to go
forward.
back to all stops that don't have a pad.
We do
and
not have
put
to
a
go
pad.
back, it's not a retro program, but as we make changes and if we move anything, where if we make a modification, we are adding, some of these pads also vary in cost because we may be adding a boarding pad, but if we're adding a bench, there needs to be something for it to sit on. And so you may see a boarding pad that's, a couple $1,000s more than another one because we're adding the concrete. Tazai's done an excellent job at looking at some of our historical shelters that were placed that may not have appropriate ADA accessibility and bringing those to the to the surface, that sort of thing. But yeah, so there was a sort of like, we have gone beyond a reasonable threshold of shelters. And we got some, I think, newer information, and we're collectively looking at it with a bit of a different perspective. So I think when we're talking about budget, we are thinking of it a little bit differently from just the shelter focus to the full, how do we manage amenities themselves? How do we manage, this is not a shelter program, it's a bus stop improvement program, if that makes sense.
But just
Yeah.
give Michael some historical context. I
Yeah.
agree with your idea, and then to know, it was George and Rick that I think doubled the budget back in 2021,
There was like a surge of work in that area already.
an emphasis.
We can look at it again too.
Yeah. And we're happy to put together some additional
Yeah.
information for you all. We've also just seen an increased cost, right? If someone wants to collaborate on a shelter, for many years it felt very affordable, and we could give them a number and people sort of were like, okay. And we've gotten to the point where if we're at a sign with a pole and we give someone a number, their heart might race a little bit. But just the increased cost, I mean, we approved a resolution recently for the increased cost of the physical amenities themselves. And increased cost of the work itself. And so that's something that we just want to make sure is clear, and also that the maintenance portion of this, there's been a lot of talk also at the city level of planning that is, beautiful things have been built, but we are not necessarily regularly building maintenance into these things, and that's where we shoot ourselves in the foot with the future of our programs, because we're not thinking forward enough to be able to care for the beautiful things that we're putting out into the community. So we really want to make that a focus and continue to not just invest, but reinvest in the things that we've already done.
And you don't mean we, Lextran, you mean we collectively, when we're gifted a $20,000 shelter or $50,000 shelter from LexArts that we then have to maintain. You don't mean we didn't think about it, we thought about it.
We thought about it, yes. I think we maybe probably underestimated the amount of inflation that may be happening, and sort of the potential wear and tear of some of the shelters that we selected to put on the street. We've worked a lot with our maintenance team to say what's easiest to maintain, what's easiest to replace a piece or a part of, and how are we focusing on maybe not having a bunch of varied types of shelters, and even though that feels very, mono, our maintenance on those internally is much more reasonable. We may have parts available already versus older style shelters that are very ornate and very difficult or no longer manufactured. So it's very layered, but yes, like as a community, I think we definitely are feeling the cost of ongoing maintenance of investments that we've made in the city, and it's an important piece that we've been looking at.
Because there was also an issue, I think it was LexArts was driving it, or who was driving the art shelters? LexArts. And they did,
Not LexArts, I'm sorry.
there was a group,
Arts Connect.
Arts Connect,
Be a creative.
that did what, 10 to 15 beautiful shelters, $50,000 to $100,000 shelters that now we have to maintain. And the one on Leestown, I feel so sad, it's like dilapidated because of the construction, the road construction.
Yeah, those are, and one of the things that we've been working on, and I'll give Josiah and Greg Butler credit, that we've been working on how can we incorporate great public art into our shelters in a reasonable, feasible, cost-effective way. And so we do have a program plan that we've put together. It's an evergreen document, but we've been sharing it with partners and helping them understand what an investment might look like for them, which is not $50,000. And what that really does for the transit experience, for the beautification of the location where the shelter is itself, and some deterrence from extracurricular activities on the shelters themselves, that sort of thing. And so I think over the last couple of years we've had a group of people, and at the direction of Fred, to really think hard about these things and how do we keep moving forward, and how do we mitigate some of the lessons that we've learned, but maintain a good path and keep it going.
And the results of that is the shelter up Versailles Road?
Yeah. So that was part of our initial project. So the shelter in front of the Old Furrows building at Versailles at Red Mile, That was our initial art project. We collaborated with Councilman Reynolds on that, held an art contest. There's more art coming. But you know, these are projects for beautification. We are not the first agency to look into doing this, but we're trying to really like give parameters and give people the opportunity to participate, whether it is someone who has a significant amount of funding or someone who doesn't have any funding available to them. How do they look at this, and what are their realistic costs? And $50,000 is, I don't think, realistic for any entity to make that type of non-evergreen investment.
I have one more question. Are we going, so I know there's been some issues with safety at some of our shelters. Is it, and I believe, just reading the news, there was a shooting at one of our shelters recently. When we consider a shelter, are we considering the safety? Like, is see-through now the go-through for safety, or is not see-through the go-through for, I'm guessing that's all considered as we pick our style for shelters, but just understanding how that fits in.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, so great question. In consideration, that area where it happened, those shelters do need replacement. Obviously, that was high priority on the list, but when you have things like that happen, it kind of slows the process. Now we got to reconsider, okay, what can we do to make it safer? And that's something I've been researching with our vendor, is looking at quotes and maybe some perforated metal, right? With a mix between like where the operator on the bus can still see the person in the shelter, like where it's clear on the sides, but the back side is a protection barrier, I guess you could say. It's also good in the sense of maybe like protection against vandalism, right? And people, busting the window pane, the glass panels out, things of that nature. So that is a heavy consideration, depending on, the area, the history of those shelters, which has been a big problem in that area with vandalism.
I'm going to say, at that particular event, as horrible as it was, it had nothing to do with it. It wasn't someone looking to use our service. It wasn't at the shelter. It just happened to be in the area, so it's attributed to
The that's what all the articles say.
That's what the articles say, but it's not.
It wasn't directly related.
Wasn't related to us in any way.
There's a consideration with art too, to say there's a minimum visibility, and asking people to get really creative to keep that visibility. Those solar lights are also really helpful in deterring sort of unwanted activities, I'll say, at any of the stops, right? You are under a bright light. What you're doing is seen. So the safety is a big consideration. Also the locations themselves are, from the operations perspective, from the safety perspective, is putting a shelter here the best thing to do, and how does it all work together?
Yeah, I definitely consult with our safety department and operations in consideration, since they have more expertise, and how it would affect the safety of passengers, and how it would affect our service as far as our operators and being able to be efficient.
Well, it seems like, it's always been a very thorough response, but thank you for the very thorough analysis and then considering that. So I was just considering, it sounds like safety is also considered, and you really take the characteristic of the neighborhood and everything that's going into that as you make your recommendations.
Characteristics of road as well, yeah, things like that.
Thank you. And then of I think the 93,000 that we're gonna pass here shortly, is that our entire budget for the year for this program?
It's a combination of some 5307 funds left over from last year and for this year.
So we still have more in the budget for ramp throughout the year?
Yes, we have about 300,000 for the shelters, and then the solar lighting that she mentioned, there's a separate grant for 293,000 for that.
But we do want to keep some liquidity available in the event that we have to do some road work, like unexpected damage to the road. We also use that money for that as well. So we try to keep some available money.
So these recommendations are just kind of the first pass, and later on in the year is a second pass?
Yeah, we try to do this once a year or so.
I'm pushing,
Yeah,
I'm
Taz
trying
might-
to
Taz will do
go
it
harder than
every
that.
quarter,
Yeah.
if you could.
I'm looking at the next phase, like prior to the end of the fiscal year, from what I've kind of calculated and was looking at. And
But
what
about
we'll
once
be
a
at
year is
going
this
into the
big.
following.
Big ask, okay.
Any other questions? Thank you both.
Thank you.
All right, we'll move on to our action items. I'm gonna save your voice and try to read as many of these.
Yeah, and Emily's gonna do the first one, then Nikki's gonna do the next two.
Okay.
I've been texting instructions.
Very good. All right, 2025-19, that's for bus up.
Yes, so this task order is for a total of $95,346. The work itself is the 92 number, and then the $2,500 for mobilization fee for our the crew who will be providing the work itself. So we worked with Shawcon before. We Resolution 2021-13 was the initial contract for them, and so this task order will cover what we were speaking of today: 3 shelter replacements, 8 boarding pads, 2 bench placements, and 7 trash cans. So it will require multiple mobilizations, but they will only be charging us a single mobilization fee as part of the work. I feel like we've just answered all the questions, but please go ahead.
Is it spread around the various routes?
It is. It's spread, and I will give Tazaya all the credit in the world that he is looking and sort of going route by route. But yes, it is spread out throughout the city, and not just focusing on a single neighborhood or a single area, making sure that the need, the different locations, and we're spreading the love to everybody. And I would rattle off the routes themselves, but there are a number of them. I pulled it up. So there are some on Versailles Road, the route modifications that we made with Route 24, which is Old Frankfort Pike, over on Palumbo, Tate's Creek, Hollow Creek, North Limestone, Harrodsburg Road, Wood Hill, Creative Drive, Magnolia Springs out in Leestown. So really a wide swath across the city. And that is a thought that we definitely want to make sure that we're not concentrating all of the funding in a single area, but making sure that everybody gets a little love.
Any other questions?
As long as there's no single area that somebody's gonna complain about.
I can't make that guarantee. They're not highly concentrated in a single area. If someone's gonna say, I didn't get mine, maybe.
One per council member.
There's only 4.
All right, motion to approve?
Motion to approve.
Thank you, Jamie. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right, next up, 2025-20, fasteners and shop supplies. Still remember when I joined this board, they said most of what we do is approve shop supplies.
Yes, this one is a very exciting one for fasteners, which could be screws, nuts, bolts, thousands of items that they use. So we have not included the price list for that because there are so many of them, but we will be glad to share that with you if you'd like. But we received 5 proposals. We put out the RFP in May, received proposals in July, and the committee has recommended for Duke's A&W Enterprises to be the winner of this contract. The term of the contract is for 2 years with 3 option years. And any specific items that you're curious about, Chris will be more than happy to answer with fasteners, which and other shop supplies.
Was Duke's an incumbent?
Yes.
How long have they been incumbent?
We have used 3 of these pretty consistently. We've traded in and out over the years. Some of them we do quotes if there's certain items that seem really high, but we have used Duke's for 3.
The last one was fast.
The last one was Fastenal, and the one before that was Duke's.
So they're not the
Okay, so
incumbent.
they're not directly in the incumbent, but we've worked with them
Yes.
before. Got it. Any other questions? Is there a motion to approve?
So,
Thank you, George. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Jamie, all in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. This next one is for hybrid battery replacement. We currently still have 4 hybrid buses. We have 2 that are slated for disposal later this year, but we always have to make arrangements just in case we have a battery go out in one of them. We have not had to replace very many of them over the years, but we always have a contract for that. We released the RFP in July. We received proposals in September, and out of 2 proposals, we recommended Green Tech Auto for that. The cost there, you'll see, based on what we need, are quite expensive, not only for the battery but for installation for each one of these. It's funded through our preventive maintenance and our 5307 grant.
And this is a use sparingly contract.
Yes,
Only-
use sparingly. We do not anticipate, we've not had to do this, replace these every year on a consistent basis or anything, but we do want to make sure that we have a vendor out there just in case. We don't want to have a bus down because of a battery. So this contract is for 2 years with 2 option years.
And you said these buses go out of service when?
There are 4 of them, and 2 of them will go out of service later this year. When we receive new buses, then we'll take 2 of them out of service.
Okay. And the other 2,
The other 2 are currently still in service.
when are they scheduled to roll off?
Those are 2012 models.
Yeah.
They're the newer models.
It'll be a few more years. We've probably got 4 more years with them at least.
Okay. I just want to make sure we weren't signing a contract for longer than we really needed to.
Oh, no, no.
Okay. That sounds reasonable.
A motion to approve.
Thank you, Jamie. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Michael? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you.
We also have a change order for Cummins rebuilt engines. We always have a contract for the rebuilt engines. When we need those, we budget for usually about 3 of those for the fiscal year. Sometimes we've not had to do that many, sometimes we've had to do more. There is a cost increase that was built into the contract, so this is just a change order. There's no action, we just want to inform you of the change.
And are all of these part numbers different engine builds?
Yes.
Okay.
I mean, a 15% increase is probably reasonable, but is that high for this year? Or no, that every year it goes up 15%?
It's pretty normal for items like this.
But do we see one every year?
Like every year it goes up 15%?
No, it's built in, it's usually built in every couple of years for inflation costs.
So this is over and above that.
Yes.
Okay.
I'll keep combined years.
They're quite expensive, so
Mhm.
we usually budget for 3 of them, but we have to be prepared just in case.
And just, how many times would we rebuild an engine on a bus before that bus is retired?
It really depends on what type. So a CNG bus, you might be 3 to 4.
Okay.
Diesel, you might be 2.
Okay. So expensive, but less expensive than a new bus?
Or the 10%.
Yeah. All right. Thank you for that. I do not see any old or new business.
No. Proposed agenda items for next month would be maintenance, uniform, and linen rentals, and our marketing and public relations services contracts.
Great. Seeing no need for closed session, we are adjourned. Thank you very much.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
I'll say, too, this weather is